Jean-Luc Picard has a knack for the poetic drive-by observation. The USS Titan is shedding decoy transponders, and Worf calls Picard's wine sour mead. It is quite tart.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we've got a treat. This was awesome. We are doing a review of Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 6, The Bounty, written by Christopher Monfett, directed by our good buddy, Mr. Dan Liu. Man,
Wow.
How are you today, Cirroc? There's so much to talk about.
Yeah, tell me about it. What another great episode.
All right.
I should have known it was a Dan Liu episode. it was good, man.
First of all, we get some Geordi. We get some Alondra LaForge, who is his daughter in real life and on the show. We got a little spoilers, everybody, but you're watching this for spoilers. We got a little bit of Deanna Troi at the end there. We got some Data and Lore and Lal and B4 and Dr. Noonien Soong. By the way, Cirroc, Lal was originally played by two characters. Hallie Todd, I believe, is the lady that played Lal. I don't know how I know that, but I think she goes to conventions. But the one that played her first at the first part of the episode was our good buddy that joined us earlier this week. Let me remember his name. Leonard Crowfoot, if you recall. He was on our Next Generation review for the Next Generation episode, and he also played Lal. Anyway, that's a lot to say, but there was a lot going on in Data's head.
I didn't even catch the Lal reference. Who's Lal?
Lal is Data's offspring from the Next Generation episode Offspring. It's like 4th season or 5th season Next Generation, somewhere in the middle there. So we'll be getting up to it in our reviews in a year or so.
Oh, so when I saw that picture of Leonard Crowfoot in that bodysuit that kind of had no body parts,
that's exactly
outstanding.
It. Yep.
That was Lal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we got a little bit of that in this episode.
Got a little bit of everything. Also, oh man, there's too much to mention, but I'm just going to throw it all out. So you could hear over the comms, Sternbach to Cole. That has to be in reference to Mr. Rick Sternbach, who was like a space illustrator on the 90s Star Trek. He would make like the space stuff and the whatever, which is, he's like a legendary space illustrator. I don't know if Cole was referencing somebody. If so, everybody let us know in the comments below. But I think this had the most references of any episode of Picard.
I caught a few references, yeah. And the Cole is to J. Cole, the rapper. They wanted a little shout out to J. Cole.
Nice. Must have been it.
It must have been that Cole. But no.
Or Robert Coltrane.
Robert Coltrane. No, the references I caught were mostly related to DS9 references. I think they did say the Defiant at one point when they were going through the ships.
They showed the Defiant too, yeah.
Yeah, they mentioned the Defiant, the New Jersey, Kirk's Enterprise, and the Voyager. So they went through the list. That's one of the references that I picked up. Obviously, the Dominion War and the whole backstory on how the Dominion War ended and what happened, that's all DS9, and it makes me think. It all makes me think of, Ira and that basically universe building that he did, and how they're borrowing off of it in this final season of Picard.
That's true. They're not just mentioning it as references like this. They are directly building from the stuff that Ira, Robert Hewitt Wolf, Hansi, and all them built. It would be interesting to talk with them and see how much they're enjoying Picard, if they're going like, wow, if it's like feels really fulfilling to know that what they built in Deep Space Nine is kind of like a stepping stone for Picard. It's not just like a reference. It's like fully, the storyline or a big chunk of it. Really cool.
It is really cool. They use an image of Odo at one point when they were looking up changelings?
Yeah, a couple episodes ago. Yeah, when what's his name, Captain Liam Shaw was talking to Seven of Nine about changelings and their buckets, and then there was a picture of Odo on there, kind of like there was a picture, and I had to freeze frame it to catch it. But when they were walking through that, the Section 31, place or whatever, Riker, Raffi, and Worf, Raffi looks at the projection or the wall, the screen, and there was a skeleton floating around, and I knew it had to be something, because the way these guys do so well on this show is they do a little bit of the music score to let you know that something's happening. And so I heard the original series theme for about 5 to 8 seconds telling me, pay attention, there's something there. And so I was like, that skeleton must have been something. And so I went back and I looked and I did a little pause and play, and you could see when it's flipping around at the bottom, it says James T. Kirk. And I'm like, got it. So good job to them for always giving us these auditory cues to know to look for something. And they're paying homage to these series. And there was a ton of that in this episode.
A ton of it. Yeah. Even though, when I watch stuff, I know that everybody likes to catch the references and, we'll pause and rewind and kind of like do the research. But another part of me just wants to watch the story and just let it flow and just, let things kind of fly over my head, or I might miss things, which we can go back and talk about when we do. But I like to watch the story and the performances and see, how are the actors still engaged with their character? What kind of changes have they made in their performances? Because, with hindsight, you get a chance to kind of perfect the things that you don't want to do, right? And you can adjust. And so as an actor, you can say, well, you know what? I think I played it this way and I played it that way, and I'd like to play it this way at this time. I felt like, for example, I noticed that Geordi was a lot more, at least from what I understand him to be, more confrontational with Picard than in previous encounters that I've seen.
Totally.
Right? Because obviously there was a hierarchy in the past, and at this point it seems as if he feels like, he's earned his own level of status where he doesn't feel certain kind of intimidation. So there was a different level of communication between LaForge and Picard. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. And they've all changed a ton, honestly. And of course, the first thing we always want to do, at least us nerds, is to be like, that's not how Worf was. That's not how Picard was. That's not how Geordi was. But clearly, 20 years can change somebody. 20 years and a lot of events. Yeah. And so it's actually a good thing to notice these differences and see. Geordi's gotten married. He's had children. He's had so many things happen, which is amazing, because the joke always was that poor Geordi can't get women, and he would always try, and he was so awkward around them. But clearly, it worked out just fine for him, because now he's got 3 of them at home that all love him, which is great.
And also, Worf has changed too, with that whole pacifism type of approach, and like the whole meditation kind of spiritual monk approach, as opposed to what he's been doing before, which is the aggressive, violent, seeking Klingon approach. So I think there's a growth around the board when you watch these characters.
Yeah, it's interesting too when you mentioned that you just kind of like watch it, don't really worry too much about the references. A lot of us nerds, we just focus all on those things, and I try to separate myself from those references to say, does it hold up on its own merit without giving us all of these little Easter eggs and reminders and winks and nudges, to the fans, all the fan service. I think it does. But I think it's a lot easier for you to, watch it as just like as a clean slate. So what do you think? Does it hold up on its own without the extra bells and whistles and nods?
Yes, and what it does is, I think it's really good acting on these actors' parts. They're doing great jobs just conveying the emotions, getting into the scenes. I like the camaraderie between the guys. I felt like, for example, Riker was saying, usually when I rib on you, you fire back, but
Right.
what's up, man? It's like, what's up? And so there's that history there where you can feel the camaraderie, you can feel the comfortness to say certain things, and that's what I feel the most about it, is that these guys feel close enough to each other to say things in a very natural and kind of from the heart type of way, and that's what I resonates with me. I think each pairing and all of these pairings and couples that they're making are showing good relationship building.
That also reminds me, everybody check this out for just a second. The Emmy-nominated first season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds is now on Blu-ray, DVD, and limited edition Blu-ray Steelbook. Oh, that's pretty cool. Explore every edge of the galaxy with over 100 minutes of special features, including exclusive cast and crew interviews, a gag reel, deleted scenes, and more. Limited edition 4K UHD Steelbook is also available for pre-order. So everybody go check that out. That sounds freaking awesome. Steelbook, huh?
Yeah.
Can't wait for season 2 too. Back to Picard here. Here's another thing that I noticed.
And so, okay, go ahead. You go first.
No, please. I was about to change the subject to a different.
I'm going to change the subject slightly too, but I want to change it in this way. So when I do watch it in the way that you're talking about, and I start to say, try to put the story together, and is it cohesive? Is it coherent?
Mm-hmm.
I do find certain holes in the story, and particularly in this one, I don't know if it's a hole, then maybe it can be explained. But when Jack's talking with Picard, and he says, he's got the same kind of illness that Picard has, that he had to get a synthetic body for in the first season or the second season of this show. When Jack says, well, you don't have to deal with it because you've got the synthetic body or whatever, right? I'm thinking, how does he know?
Yeah, that's true. He must have told him somewhere along the line, because what he said was, you don't have to deal with Irumodic syndrome. Irumodic syndrome was something that was revealed to Picard and to the audience in the last episode of The Next Generation. Really cool in All Good Things, the final episode of The Next Generation. Picard is diagnosed with Irumodic syndrome. At least in the future, he does. Anyway, so basically, he passed that along.
Syndrome.
Yeah, he passed that along to Jack.
At what point, though? You know what I mean? It was.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't remember him saying that he is a synthetic, or that he's a synth golem. Yeah,
right. And we only learned that last season, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which Jack wasn't around.
2 seasons ago.
Yeah. Was it on the first season that they
had
to switch his body? I think it was the end of the first season, where they had to save his life by switching him into that artificial body
and that's why he said he didn't survive it. He's like, no, actually, I didn't survive it. I died. He had a headache and then died.
Right. Which is all I'm saying is I just didn't see where Jack would know that occurred. That happened all while they weren't together. So unless he had a sit-down conversation telling him, by the way, this guy that you're looking at is not really the guy that you're looking at, which is a weird thing to say to somebody. You know what I mean? So
yeah, that's especially not right away.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was like, how would he know? So that's my nerd.
But speaking of golems, that reminds me of Gollum of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, everybody. And the reason I was also reminded of that when watching this was when Picard said burgle, and Riker says, excellent use of the word burgle, Captain, which was a funny line, but it also reminded me of The Hobbit, because way back in the day, the Hobbit books, or book, I should say, they that's what the dwarves would say. You know, Bilbo came on as a burglar, and they would say, "You're a burglar. Go burgle something." And that was the first time I'd ever heard the term burgle. You know, go burgle, go. You know, and that was anyway. So it reminded me of that. I don't know if it was a reference to it, but it sure was a reference in my mind and made me very happy. There was a lot of comedy.
I wrote that down in my notes too. There
was a ton of comedy when
and it was a well-delivered line on Riker's part. The way he said excellent use of the word, but he had a bunch of them too this episode.
When they said, Worf said, "I prefer pacifism to combat," when they're going on the transporter pad, and Riker goes, "We're all gonna die." So funny. Funny. Or when this was Worf, he says, "I've gone into battle with many lovers, or with lovers many times," and 709 says, "I'm not going," and he goes, "That is a relief. I was practicing deceit." Good stuff. This is great.
This is great stuff. I wrote the same stuff down because these are great lines delivered right on point. I was just boom right there. That was timing on Michael Dorn's part. That is a really. He went right into that as a relief.
Oh, I loved it.
I loved it too. I thought Captain Shaw had a great line when he said, "Yeah, it's been a weird week."
Totally.
It was just like, he's so good. One line, and it just stands out, you know. But yeah, these guys are the sour mead line, you know.
This had the most comedy, I think, of any episode of any of the 3 seasons, in my opinion. I think, for example, what was another? Yeah, the Shaw thing, that was really funny. When Picard and Geordi are like, cloaking device, and they go, and Picard goes, Jack, and Geordi goes, Sydney.
Yeah,
I'm like, that's beautiful. It's cute. It's funny. Oh, it's beautiful.
And then Geordi says, "Stay away from my daughter." Like right away, looks at Jack like, "I don't want any part of this."
I just can't believe how many great moments they crammed into this episode. Not just the comedy, but also
a million.
Geordi seeing Beverly for the first time in a long time, and they hug and everything's cool. But when he sees Data for the first time, and he barely whispers, "Data." Oh man, that is so good, because they're such good friends in Next Generation. They become really great, you know, best friends, kind of like Bashir and O'Brien. And it was just beautiful. And then when Data recognizes him when he wakes up, and Geordi has like the tears in his eyes, beautiful, just great stuff, which was something he could never do back in Next Generation, because if he had tears in his eyes, we wouldn't know. They'd just be welling up in his visor, and he'd have to turn to his side and they would roll out.
Moment between Riker and Worf, when Riker says, you know, you're talking about the sour mead, and Riker says, "Seriously?" And he says, "I just said it." I think Worf says, I just said it. Like what else do you want me to say?
Yeah, it's very good stuff. So the ships also, I was certainly looking for the Defiant. There's no way they're not going to have the Defiant. And they did show the Defiant and the USS New Jersey. They also showed the Voyager. And they played the theme songs in the scoring when they would show those ships. So the Defiant did have the Deep Space Nine theme. It was kind of faint. Yeah. I had to go back and listen for it. I was like, wait a minute, they must be playing that. So I had to go back and listen for it. And I did hear it, and I heard the Voyager one and so forth. They keep giving us these auditory cues that are just, it's just beautiful seeing those ships again and hearing that music again. And there was just so much of that in this episode. The HMS Bounty, Klingon bird of prey. I believe that was Star Trek IV, because they even said, "Oh, the whales thing," right? That's the movie Star Trek IV. I just can't even cover it all. There's just so much good stuff in there. Oh, did you notice the flashback of Riker and Data whistling Pop Goes the Weasel from the very first episode of The Next Generation, Encounter at Farpoint. When we first saw Data.
I did see it. And, that was another little, just nice little gem to throw in there. It's just too much stuff, really. I thought I really liked the scenes between Geordi and his daughter Sydney when they were kind of having that conversation. I thought it was great, the irony when he was like being the protective dad and he's saying, that's their job, just leave it to Starfleet. And she's like, I am Starfleet. And I love that moment when she stood up for herself and kind of like, that to me was like a Nog moment, kind of standing up and having your own, like, this is my identity moment and I'm going to fight for this.
The moment I really liked between those two, and it was really beautifully delivered and beautifully written, was when she said, when Geordi's basically saying, you don't have to go on this, you can stay with us. And she says, I'm on the run with my crew. And then Geordi says, they're not your family. And she says, yes, they are. And you taught me that. I'm like, oh, A+. Close the book. Beautiful writing, beautifully delivered. Geordi, sit and think about that for a second and then come around. We'll welcome you back with open arms. But that was beautiful. That was perfect.
Excellent scenes. Even just the camaraderie between the sisters when they were like, how Dad is, just that little couple of moments there, I just think there was a Tribble reference in there, a genetically modified Tribble.
What the hell was that? Looked like a sea anemone coming out. It's coming at him.
Just popped out of there, out of nowhere. I just thought the whole thing was great. I like the villain as well. I think this villain, Amanda Plummer, is so good because, this is a small woman, but she plays so much larger than life in the way she carries this role. And when Amanda, what's the name of that character? I always forget the name of this villain.
Vadic, who is now revealed to be a changeling. As a certainty, she is a changeling.
Yeah, Darth Vadic.
There it is.
Yeah. When Vadic comes around, I feel like, the mood changes. Even though the stature is small, it still feels larger than life. When Riker gets caught at the end, I'm like, oh man, you're in the worst hands. Like you were better off dead than being caught by this person. It's like, that's not whose hands you want to be in. So just like the performances all around, the villain, the camaraderie between each other, I'm starting to just feel the vibe that everybody's getting to know each other. The forthcomingness of Beverly talking about what Jack's going through and that whole kind of dealing with that issue. I like. We still don't know what it is because there's definitely more to these visions than just whatever sickness that
totally there's got to be
Picard has.
So we have a lot more to cover, everybody, but we've got to be joined by a few radical people in just a second here. Before we do, though, let's give a very special thanks to several rad folk named Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arucan, Titus Mohler, Darlena Marie, Dr. Muhammad Noor, Tierney C. Diekman, Anna Post, Anil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, DQ, Neil Akasaka, Justine Norton Kurtzen, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, live from Tokyo, Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Jane Jorgensen, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Jed Thompson, Luther Haynes Jr., Dr. Courtney Lewis, Beth Ernest, and of course, Dr. Susan V. Gruner and Jason Okun. Everybody stick around. We've got much more to talk about. we have much to discuss. But this time, Worf said, we have much to report, which was freaking adorable. Yeah. Anyway, we'll see you on the other side on the 7th Rule. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 7th Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
All right, it's the free-for-all. We're going to go nuts. Everybody's going crazy for all the ships and stuff. Look who's here. It's our good friend Allison wearing a Delta Quad Space Tour shirt from the Voyager documentary. You thought I didn't notice, but I did. That looks awesome. Malissa Longo is also here wearing her favorite Stembolt and Chill shirt, which you can find at the link in the description box. Her favorite one of one. Carrie Schwent is also here wearing a Starfleet Command shirt. That's cool.
Yeah, from the cruise.
Oh,
but Goldu Scott Jensen's like, y'all got nothing on my lower deck shirt. What's up, dude?
Keep it real.
And TJ Jackson-Bey is out in Missouri with his Chat Pack shirt, feeling feisty.
Yeah. No.
Anna Post is here wearing a new baby that will probably make an appearance at some point.
Yeah.
Congrats to her. And Matt Boardman is here. He's going to tell us all about spaceships, I bet. So real quick, here are the trivioids of the week, everybody. The USS Titan is shedding decoy transponders. Vadic wants to know all of Picard's friends and loved ones. Jack Crusher has Irumodic syndrome. Van Gogh did incredible things with an inflamed brain. Worf calls Picard's wine sour mead. It is quite tart. Worf has much to report. Breakups on Worf's homeworld seldom end without bloodshed, but isn't his homeworld technically Earth? That's where he... Anyway, whatever.
Russia?
Yeah, Russia is savage. There's an attack tribble. Worf used to poke back. The Defiant looks as beautiful as ever, as does the Voyager and all the others, of course. Picard has a knack for the poetic drive-by observation, and it's been a weird week.
I'm sorry, I'm distracted by Anna's little bundle. Oh, she's beautiful.
Here we go.
Look at her full head of hair.
How appropriate for this episode. This episode is all about, families and what we pass on.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
So cute.
It's a good omen.
So, well, let's just hop into it, shall we? We've also got some people who sent things in, like John Orchiola, our buddy Ria with a very long last name that's Greek, Don Crandall, of course. But first things first, let's get back into this here. Melissa, can you just go ahead and set us up here?
Yeah. First of all, triples.
What kind of there?
Attack tribble.
Trouble there.
Now we know how they eat everything.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They're like roly-polies, and then they open up and then roll back up. Amazing episode. There's so much to cover, and you already mentioned in the trivioids one of my favorite Worf moments about I have been in battle with many lovers, and I was practicing pretense. And then Worf and Riker's banter together is wonderful. Love it. I love the nostalgia of all of the little nuggets they put into this episode. And while I've read a lot about, fan service, that might be true, but they did it in a way that made it felt like they were bringing the entire universe together. The entire Star Trek universe felt like one universe instead of, this is a Voyager show. This is a Deep Space Nine show. This is, this is TOS. And I love that they, thread in everything from TOS to Voyager in this episode, and that was wonderful. I love the shots of Riker and Data in season 1 Yeah, it was so beautiful and so touching, and this episode was very moving, and and I just have to say, Jack and Sydney sitting in a tree.
Thank you.
I am shipping them very, very much.
So, sorry, go ahead.
And there's more music. That's the last thing. I loved how they brought in the music from each ship that was from each show. So when the Defiant came up, Deep Space Nine played. When TOS came up, that played, and Voyager, that theme song played as well. It was so beautiful. Beautifully done. And
Loved
more
it.
to say, but go ahead. Everyone else have fun too.
When you were mentioning Jack and Sydney, our good buddy John Orchiola of Screen Rant, who covers Star Trek, texted this morning saying that he wants to call them Crasher because of her nickname is Crash, and he is Jack Crusher. But then about an hour later, he texted me a screenshot that apparently Terry Metalis has said, nope, it's La Crash. No, it's La Crush. That's what it is, La Crush.
Ooh, I
So
like that.
Everybody
I
in the
actually came up with
comments,
something similar.
yeah, everybody in the comments below, let us know. Do you agree with Terry that it should be La Crush? Or do you agree with John Orchiola of Screen Rant that it should be Crasher? Or do you have a third option like Carrie probably
we have
does?
a live chat going too. I think this should be a poll.
Yeah, you're probably right.
So too.
Carrie, what was your idea?
The SS La Crusher.
Mm-hmm.
You got LaForge and Crusher, so La Crusher.
La Crusher. Three options there.
Insane chemistry.
Well,
so good.
Oh, also, did you guys get the non-appearance mentions? There are quite a few.
James T. Kirk, although his skeleton was there, so I don't know if that counts.
They also mentioned him, though. They also said his name.
Right.
Oh, that's true. If there's an image of him, does that count?
Right. Huh. I mean, it wasn't his face. So.
Yeah, we didn't actually see. I'm sure he didn't get it checked.
Yeah.
Yeah, we also had.
Man, there's no actor for Kirk, so it's a man.
There was also Ro Laren. We also heard Lol, B4, Lore, and Data. I mean, that wasn't really technically Data. That was some new amalgamation of all those guys or whatever.
Old Data.
Also, real quick,
aged Data.
Sydney crashed speeders. I was like, oh, there's a nice Star Wars reference. So
yeah,
for all you nerds out there.
There was a second Star Wars reference, and I can't. It was like something about shit. I don't know. There was another
Somebody's name.
Sand getting everywhere.
Yeah.
Scott Jensen, you love Star Wars, but what do you think of this episode?
I love this episode, and I might have loved it more than Star Wars. I don't want to make inflammatory statements, but I make inflammatory statements every day, so this is just today's. I was not emotionally prepared for that shot behind Ryan right there. I thought I was ready to see everybody again, but when LeVar Burton walked in with that uniform on, that was it. And I love this variation of that uniform too. Ro wore one last week where it's kind of like a jacket that goes over it, it looks like. I really, really like that one. It's going to be cool seeing people start to wear those to cons and stuff to see that in motion and everything. The other thing I was also not ready for was the emotional reaction that Seven had when she saw the Voyager in space dock. I thought that was just the way her face suddenly changed, and she was pulled right back and said that was home. She knocked it out of the park in that particular scene. And then I like how she pointed out that the one thing, what was that, the drive-by, what kind of talking that Picard does?
Observations.
Observations. And how he makes people actually feel seen in that. I really like that particular that she said makes people feel seen. I think that's an important thing that a lot of people go through life kind of missing out on, is making other people feel seen around them. So I think it's really, really important. And then also that scene connected one of my absolute favorite moments, and I had to talk about this earlier, but we got the one with the whales. and the one with the whales was important, and they had to fish that out of the bottom of the ocean, and then the one with the whales is the only reason that they're all alive. So finally, after all these years, you got a little respect for the best Star Trek movie of all time.
Agreed.
The best of all time. Wow, bold. Everybody in the comments below, do you agree with Gul Duskat, the evil one, that Star Trek 4 is the best Star Trek movie ever? Allison Leach Hyde is like, I doubt it, but what did you think of this episode?
Was not prepared to cry as much as I did. Geordi as a father is amazing. His relationship with his girls and how they've, excuse my voice, I'm getting over a cold, and is just beautiful. And you can really see that all those actors have really bonded together, and it is beautiful. I loved the scene where Geordi and Sydney where he's saying, you're going to stay here, Picard. It said he'd say, we forced you to do this and you can be safe. And she's like, no, I learned this from you. I'm going to go save my family. It's not just my birth family, my crew's my family too. And so, yeah, those were my favorite type of scenes, where the relationships between the fathers, one who's been a father for his children's entire lives, and then one going, I found out like 2 days ago. I don't know what to do. So seeing Geordi get to be Picard's mentor in something was truly beautiful, because Geordi was always my favorite character on Next Gen. And so
cool. Awesome. Great stuff. Everybody in the comments below, let us know, is Geordi your favorite character? Top 10 for sure, right? We love him. On a post, how are you? Congratulations. And what did you think of this episode?
I really loved this episode. I have to admit, I watched it in 3 separate chunks in between sleeping in the middle of the night. This one was awake. So I have to go back and watch it all together at one chunk. But I loved the constant references to family and what it means and how it's different. I liked that tribbles eat like starfishes. But the moment where, Seven talks about Voyager and her family, and I'm like, well, what happened to them? Why aren't you like, where is everybody now? What's your connection to everybody? Because it sounds like she's lost connection to most people. The only person she's really referenced was Janeway. So like, what happened there? It makes me very curious. I really loved the moment where not just Geordi said Data, but the moment where Data said Geordi, and it was those first. And I think one of the things that drove me nuts the most about like Nemesis in the end is Geordi and Data were always like the buddies. And they never, like, Picard said goodbye to Data, and then season 1 Picard, said goodbye to Data again, but Geordi never got that, and Geordi was Data's closest friend. And like, you saw that in that moment, just in their voices, with that one word, naming the other person first, was just hit the heartstrings. That last moment with Troy, like, all I could think of, I know Vadic said, go find their families, but like, how do you know, dealing with changelings, that that's really who that is? Like, what does that bring up with like how far you go, how much you let the other person be used against you, like all sorts of questions for the next episode, when you have no idea if that's really that person or not.
Good point.
Like, I guess, inside information you can ask, but like all of those deep questions just hurt as much as like finding out if that's the real person or not.
That's a great point.
Wow.
What if it's just a changeling pretending, and then Riker basically sells out all of his friends, and they're like, "Ha, I got you." Solid.
Gotta test that to make sure that it's the person that you think it is.
What if that's actually Troy, but not Riker, and they're tricking Troy into? That's been a changeling Riker too. The whole time.
That's smart.
Yeah, and I loved the banter with like Riker being like, "You used to be more fun with war."
Oh yes.
Yeah.
You know, you see how people change in their lives, and you know, if you're not constantly with those people, those changes can sometimes you don't realize the growth that people make in certain directions if you're not with them all the time.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of years have passed.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Thanks, Anna. Carrie Schwent is hanging out here with her brand new cruise shirt, Star Trek The Cruise. What's up? What'd you think of this episode?
This episode was fantastic. I watched it very early this morning and then started watching it again on my breaks at work and hastily scribbled down notes. I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to read them later, but we'll see how that goes. But yes, so many good things. The thing with as soon as I saw the tribbles, I'm like, I got to use some of my tribble memes. Some of these I turned into magnets for the door decorations on the cruise, and the image behind Malissa. If you've never seen it, there was a Stephen King story that they turned into like a two-part miniseries called The Langoliers, and you see them at the very end, and the CG is terrible, but they look a lot like the image behind Malissa. And Riker giving Worf grief over, oh no, it's an attack, it's an attack tribble. I was getting ready for work while I was watching this, so I had my tiny little phone and I'm leaning forward to look at it because it was a little bit dark. That thing hits the screen, scared the ever living you know what out of me. But yeah, the chemistry with Jack and Baby LaForge is fantastic. There were some great quotes. A couple of them. The one by Riker, as they're beaming down, he's like, "Okay, if we get into it, we're gonna have to bust out some Klingon moves." Worf is like, "Yeah, I'm a pacifist now." Riker's like, "Oh crap, we're gonna die." Right as they're beaming, just the greatest facial expression. And where was it? Oh yeah, I just wrote it down. There was a great quote by Picard when he's sitting there talking with Geordi about their children, and he says, "We are not in control of what we pass on." And I love that. It's pretty much like the quote that you hear in a couple times in the play Hamilton, but you have no control over who lives, who dies, who tells your story. Just the Star Trek sort of version of that, and I love that because you can try to teach your kids all of this stuff, but you don't really have any control of what they take in and then use when they get older. And past it with now that I've got my kid's about to turn 22, and you see his growth in the adult he's turning into. I can definitely relate to that conversation a lot. And you hear Moriarty, just the sound of his voice just sent goose pimples like over my like chill down the spine, goose pimples. And the dude still looks fantastic. I mean, I'm sure he's probably awake, but he still looks really good. I'm sad we didn't get to have him for longer. And I'm not sure if we needed the visual flashbacks with the whistling. As soon as the melody sped up, I immediately got it. I mean, it looks cool for anybody who hasn't seen Encounter at Farpoint. I suppose that's probably why they included it, but I didn't really need it. As soon as the melody sped up, I'm like, oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It can be difficult for some of us. I'm not the greatest at it, but
that's great stuff. We hardly even talked about Moriarty, but yeah. What were you saying, Cirroc?
No, I was going to ask everybody if they have ever called out a musical note when they heard it. Has anybody said, "Oh, B flat"? B flat.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
When I was in school and in music theory class.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
It takes me a while. I usually have to picture it on a guitar, and I go, "Oh, that's an F." Sounds like the first chord of "Smells Like Teen Spirit." That's how I just connect it to songs.
Teen Spirit. Okay.
TJ Jackson-Bey is thinking about it. What do you think of this episode?
Oh my goodness, this episode is probably going to be my favorite of the season. I did not know how much I needed to see this LaForge family together. And their performances stole the episode for me. And there was, so much going on. We got all of the ships. We saw the Defiant. Oh my goodness. That was so awesome. Seeing the Defiant. And I love the Worfisms in this episode, and it really, really speaks to me a lot. The things that he had to say, and Riker's reactions were priceless. Worf said the most advantageous battle stance is being one within oneself. So awesome. And he says, we will not be prey, we will be friendly energy.
Yes, I love the friendly energy.
And Riker's reaction is like, I don't even understand the world anymore. Like, what is this? What is going on? But there were just so many great scenes in this episode. I love the focus, the tension on family and what we pass on from one generation to the next, and the thought of born in family versus found family. Because we are ourselves a found family. I consider you guys family. And I have a born in family also. And my hat's off to, let me make sure I say that, Ashley Sharp Chestnut for the scene with LeVar, where I didn't notice it the first time, but on my second watch, I noticed the tears going down her face. And I couldn't help but think of, and even in their next scene, she explains, hey, I crashed these ships so that we could spend time together fixing them. And so in that scene before, that gave me a little bit more understanding that she's not feeling the support of her father, and she actually is following in his footsteps, and she knows that that's not recognized, and that's why those tears are going down her face. That touched me. The second time I watched it, there was almost another line that I almost missed was, we saw LaForge, we saw the daughters, but when they're working on the cloaking device, LaForge says, "Tell Mom we won't be home for dinner." And so the big mystery is still, who is Mom? And I know everybody has a theory of who it is, so I'm not even gonna say it. So this Daystrom station, I'm wondering if that's like Starfleet's Area 51. Because of the signs and the warnings, like, you see the signs at Area 51 that say lethal force will be, applied if you try to come in here. And so I wonder, in the 25th century, if there's a, storm Daystrom movement. Remember that? When everybody wanted to storm Area 51 to see if you get past the lethal force and see the aliens. That was great.
That was a good day.
That was great. So yeah, I'm also on. Okay, I don't know what name is going to win, but whatever we decide to call Sydney and Jack, I'm all for it. I'm not the ship person, but their connection, the scenes that they shared, just the looks. There weren't even words, just the looks, the body language said chemistry.
What about Jackney? Maybe that'll take off.
Doubt that.
All right, we gotta move on though. Thank you, TJ. Great stuff. Appreciate it. Mr. Matt Boardman pops back on just in time. What do you got for us, Matt? What do you think of this episode?
Oh, you're on mute.
Can't hear you.
You got a bit of Ryan-itis there, Matt. Well, while he's fixing that really quickly as well, our good friend Ria from with the Greek last name that I'll never try to pronounce says, she says that Worf quoted, let me see, he quoted Spock. He said 11 years, 5 months, 4 days. That is exactly how Spock answered in the Menagerie when asked by Commodore Mendez how long he served with Pike. What do you got for us, Matt? Can we hear you?
I think so. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Perfect. Sorry, I had a cat playing with my green screen back there. I was like, that's it. You're going in the bathroom. Man, I was not prepared for this episode. I mean, I knew it was coming, but man, this was so great. Like, I felt like that kid that used to sit in my room and paint my Star Trek models, listening to Star Trek music, and like all those fun things that that it just took me back to being a kid and reminded me of why I love Star Trek. I mean, at its very heart, I mean, this episode was about family and how, I mean, you talked about ships. I mean, there was more than just the physical ships. We had the relationships and the importance of those and the importance of family. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but that's one of the things that I love about Star Trek is that those, in some way, as we watch these episodes, we become part of, like, these people, this crew becomes our family in a way. But I loved it. I helped out in converting some of the models. I don't know if those actually made it on screen or not, but I was privy to some of the concept art of the Fleet Museum. So I was super excited to see how that was going to translate from the concept art to what we saw on screen. And I was not disappointed. I mean, we got to see the Enterprise A, as everybody talked about, the Defiant, and Stephen Barton's score behind, as we got the cues of the various theme musics and stuff. And the one that moment where Seven is describing, I mean, Jerry Ryan played that so well. I mean, it was so heavily emotional. You just you could feel the weight of seeing that ship again and those memories and everything. And then it goes from the Voyager theme into what they're calling the family theme. And it's just so beautiful. Absolute. That was touching and amazing. And I can't wait to go back to watch it again. Great humor. How lucky are we that we get this opportunity to see this season 3, and to see all these actors again. And not only do they get that opportunity to come back and revisit these characters, but I think every single one of them has just brought their A+ game. And I mean, just everything is coming together to make such a wonderful story that I didn't know that I needed, but I really did. I don't know. There's something about lately the passage of time and kind of reflecting on things. And then we had this episode and it kind of spoke to me. So I love it. Absolutely love it.
Great stuff. Thanks, Matt. Everybody, we got to roll out. On our way out, Don Crandall sent us a bunch of things. One of the things was the Genesis device, one of the secret artifacts. I missed that.
Oh, yeah, yep.
Genesis device was there. He also mentions Lal and Commodore coming back, which we hadn't seen in a long time. That's about it, everybody. Thank you, Melissa, Scott Jensen, Allison, Anna, Terry, Goldie Scott, TJ Jackson-Bey, and Matt Boardman. For Cirroc Lofton, myself, and Melissa, we'll see you next time. Until then, always remember the 7th rule.